morning.
Good morning.
Well, for you guys have been around, you know it's been a long time. 2 years in recuperation, and I've decided it's time to break loose. So I'm back. And today I would like to share with you, although there's some inspiration there, and maybe a few guidelines that can help you. Actually, today are two very important days in the spiritualist movement. And they're days that are often forgotten because they're not mentioned. And the first one that I want to mention is, today is the 193rd birthday of Andrew Jackson Davis. And so I'd like to speak a little bit about him. You know, Davis was first born in Bloomington, New York, and it was on August in 1826. And he grew up always being in touch with spirit, but was not aware of what it was. So today we celebrate his birthday, and I'd like to first begin by stating some of the facts. There is a misnomer about Davis, and it's something that we keep trying to correct. And he wrote the book, The Magic Staff, which is his life, and then he wrote the sequel, Beyond the Valley. And in the book he says, and I quote, "I am not a spiritualist." Now I think that's pretty clear. But he is very important in the spiritualist movement. And the reason is, regardless of the fact that he didn't have the title of spiritualist, Davis had created his own organization known as the Harmonial Philosophy. And he said he aligns with spiritualism as it aligns with his philosophy. And if it wasn't for Davis, a lot would not have happened. He happened to be very friendly with the pioneers that we had in Pennsylvania. And you know, at that time, Pennsylvania had some 120 churches. I think they have one now. But time has passed. But Davis reminded us always of his harmonial philosophy. And as you study it, you find a lot of spiritualism in it. And why not? Because our pioneers who started the movement realized that they had to change from their Christian beliefs to the spiritualist beliefs. And this was an issue for some of them. So Davis helped in bringing across the message as it stands. At 19, he met with Fishbowl and Lyons, and they were mesmerists. And they convinced him to be mesmerized. And the resulting product of that mesmerization session, many sessions, was the Principles of Nature for Divine Revelation. It's a book about this thick. He also wrote 30 other books. It's important to spiritualists to understand the influence that Andrew Jackson Davis had on our movement. He served, along with his wife Mary, for many, many years, and he traveled with our pioneers. And I think it was Spirit who was putting him in place to guide our pioneers who were trying to move from their total Christian belief to the understanding of spiritualism. So we do call him the forerunner of modern spiritualism. And this is what he said on March 31st, 1848, early in the morning. And I quote, "About daylight this morning, a warm breathing passed over my face, and I heard a voice, tender and strong, saying, 'Brother, the good work has begun. Behold, a living demonstration is born.' I was left wondering what could be meant by such a message." Well, unquote. The message proved true because it was on March 31st, 1848, that the Fox sisters first began the communication with the spirit of Charles B. Rosen. And you know, it's interesting how things go by. And I share this little sideline with you. About 18 years ago, I was sitting with a group of the spiritualist leaders, and I said, we have a problem. And they said, oh no. Here she goes again. Well, you know, Marylin is the researcher. And in researching, I kept picking up his name was not Rosner. But no one could find anything else because that's what had always been repeated. So I began my search. Didn't find anything for all those 18 years. And now you can laugh. I pulled out the drawer of my second drawer file cabinet, and it fell on the floor. And everything went pshh. And guess what was on top? There was a letter written by the 9-year-old son. He was 9 years old when Hydesville happened, but now he was an adult. He wrote a letter to the Spragues in answering their questions about Hydesville. And he said, we set up a tombstone on the property, and we had a little service. And the men of that day each gave a little bit of a talk about Davis, about Charles B. Rosner. And then we unveiled the tombstone we had placed on the grounds. And it was inscribed with the name of Charles B. Kresma, Modern Spiritualism, born on March 31st, 1848. So now I'm busy sending notices out to everybody. I finally found the name. It's in writing. It was written in 1898. And I would think that it's more accurate than what we're guessing because we know that several people gave different names for the peddler, all claiming to get them from spirit. So that's a little sidelight. But anyway, the question we ask today is, who is Davis and what is he all about? Well, Andrew Jackson Davis, while not the father of spiritualism, was the father of the Harmonial Brotherhood. And he formed that organization with the motto of, quote, universal liberty, fraternity, and unity, unquote. He said he did not believe in the science, philosophy, nor religion of spiritualism because he thought it needed to be corrected. So our pioneers listened to him, and they learned a lot from him. And they learned that if they would listen to Spirit, as Davis was teaching them, Spirit would guide them. Spirit would tell them what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. And sometimes I have to tell you, I don't think I have a mind of my own because I decide I'm going to do something, like write a book, and Spirit keeps saying, go here, or go there, or go someplace. And I finally give up and I go and follow them, and by gosh, I find a big sale or something. So as I say, I wonder sometimes, but to walk with Spirit is to know that they're always going to guide you. And that is one of the main things that Davis was teaching. In his philosophy, he had two main points, and the first one was harmonization of the individual. He taught if you don't come in tune with yourself, you can't come in tune with anybody. So you have to start going within. And we learned that men in their finite degree have attributes of the infinite. We know we're a divine spark of that power and that energy that we call God. Then he talked about the development, the architecture, the language, the science, the philosophy, and all the things that were on the circumference of his understanding. His second thought was, quote, the harmonization of society is the unity of man in society. And broken down into common terms, it was we are all one. And there is no division. It doesn't make any difference nationality, color, or creed. We all come from the divine energy called God, called infinite intelligence. So he proved much about what the individual could do if they were in tune with the infinite. My favorite book by Ralph Waldo Klein, by the way. Anyway, it matters not that he didn't have the title spiritualist, and it matters not that we have the title written across our back, because we should live the philosophy. And if we live the philosophy, we are teaching more of spiritualism than any sermon could ever give to you. the philosophy that the spiritualists accepted from Davis was exactly those principles. And in their guidelines of writing the principles, it took 9 years before the principles came into final being. Because every convention, they'd bring them up and they'd discuss them and they'd rehash what they believe and what they don't believe and what they should believe and every other ism that you could get. So we find that this progression started in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And that was the first major stronghold of modern spiritualism. And in those days, it was a comprehensive program of reform because the spiritualists believed in these three things: temperance and abolitionism, better prison conditions, and along with women's rights. The spiritualists were the first ones to step forward, claiming that women were equal to men. All people are of one being, and therefore there is no separate classification of low, medium, or high. We are just all one. In 1871, the general definition of spiritualism was submitted from various organizations, and they settled on 3 points. Its roots being: 1, a spiritualist understands there's a continuity of life. We simply go through one door of this plane of existence into the next plane of existence. There is no separation. It simply is a higher vibration. And our consciousness attunes to that higher vibration, and we learn more of adjusting in the spirit world, and some come back to be spirit messengers. Others go on to do other work. Becoming more spiritual is another point. Davis said, the past has vanished, and the stupendous present is before us, contemplating both the world of matter and the world of mind. So we need to remember one of the main guidelines that Davis gave to us, and that was, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter how low you may be or how high you may be, remember, quote, under all circumstances, keep an even mind, unquote. The other thing that's important about today that's celebrated by spiritualists is the science of spiritualism. We all know that spiritualism is a trinity, and that we have the science, philosophy, and the religion. And if we teach it all as a whole, it is more meaningful than if we try to separate it. As the years pass, we find that things change. For the first 6 years, there was no given messages. It was strictly philosophy. And then, when the women began giving messages, because they followed Davis with a home circle type thing, so when they began giving messages, the men, being the wheelers and dealers of the organization, said, you're not doing it on our platform. So they opened their own platform. And every Sunday they gave messages in the little building that they rented. And finally the men said, they're getting more people than we are. And you know what the women said? You're leading a group, but you don't even know how to communicate with spirit. So get with the program. And they did. Now, along with the oratories of that time, there was much said about the future. And they knew that if they didn't build a solid groundwork and foundation in the beginning, it would not have a future. But we know they obviously did a good job because we're still here. The other thing that's important about this day, we have determined that we need to do something about the science. You know, years ago, the scientists, the well-known scientists of England and of the United States studied about communication. But today, there's very little interest in it. Parapsychologists are doing more with it than anyone else. So, guess what happened? Here I was again at the 120th convention. I made a motion that we set aside the second day in August, which is Andrew Jackson Davis's birthday, a day called Science Day. And that on that day, we remind people that we're a science, and if so inclined, to speak a science oratory to give them more understanding of it. So the second Sunday of August was voted in unanimously, and we have been celebrating the Science Day since the 120th Convention. Along with these oratories, we also were told it would be nice if we took up a special offering to put in a science fund. That has been started, but it hasn't been followed through because people have not been promoting Science Day. But we're getting it going. The documentation reveals how just 3 years after Hydesville, Judge John Edmonds gave up the bench to practice spiritualism fully. They gave him an ultimatum. You either give up spiritualism or I'm going to fire you. And he said, you don't have to fire me, I quit. And so he went on to do what he had to do for spiritualism. He and Dexter wrote 2 volumes called Spiritualism, and they're written in the late 1800s, and they're very informative. They're hard to find, but there's a lot of places that have them. There is an online organization called the International Organization of Spiritualists in the Occult, and they now have 5,000 books online. That's a lot of books. And so you can always go online and read whatever you want to read. Along with that time, in 1852, the science became more prominent. Jonathan Coons invented the spirit trumpet. And you know, we have a couple in the bookstore if you want to look at them. It's where the voice of spirit comes out of the trumpet during a seance. In 1853, Dr. Professor Hare, he was a professor of the University of Professor of Chemistry at the University of Pennsylvania. And he said, this stuff that they're doing is pure madness. How about that? He thought he knew it all. And he went into the study. And as a result of the study, he had to declare, I was the one with the madness. It's real. And so he began to promote the phenomena. And at that same time, he thought there needed to be something that you could work with to communicate with spirit other than just pulling it out of the air. And he developed an item called a spirit scope. Today it would be more like a Ouija board. It was in a circular fashion with the letters on it. And his goal was to prove that spiritualists could communicate with the spirit. Big difference from where he started. So Oliver Lodge referenced all of this activity that was going on in England and in the United States as the new science. And it is a new science because we still haven't delved into it deeply enough. Dr. Gaisley contended it is the most complex of all sciences. And you know, lots of times in classes they'll say to me, how do you get it? How did you get that? But they don't understand the fact of communication. So this is one of the things he was trying to prove. In 1854, the 34th Congress of the United States was petitioned to investigate the phenomena, and it was called a memorial. They laughed at us. They put it aside, and they did nothing. In 1882 in England, William Barrett and Dawson founded the Society of Psychical Research of England. And not to be left behind, the United States followed suit in 1884 by William James, setting up the American Psychical Research Society. And the two groups worked together. In 1893, after much investigation, mediumship had been investigated quite thoroughly, and people were accepting it everywhere. Then came the war, and that established something for spiritualism. It actually was a big help, because with all those men that had lost their lives, their families were wanting to communicate them. And so the communication with spirit became more active and more familiar affiliate to more people. Today, we're becoming interested in other things in spiritualism. Slowly, we're moving into the electronic voice phenomena, where you can get voices on a regular, ordinary, little tape recorder. But you have to have the white noise coming in, and you have to have what do you call, microphones so it can be heard. And sometimes it's a lot of gobbledygook, and every now and then you get a word. So you can sit down and work with that. They're also learning more about remote viewing, seeing at a distance. It's nothing more than clairvoyance, but it's got new terminology. Others are doing things like working with orbs. Some think they're spirit. Others tell us that Kodak company that it's minute dust particles. So to each its own. It's interesting to note that all the phases of spiritualism, such as spirit photography, table tipping, and trance, and materialization, are being revived in this day and time. There is more of those four phenomena being done now than has been done in 30 or 40 years. So we want to remember that we need to have the opportunity to demonstrate the definition of spiritualism as a science. And it is because it investigates, it analyzes, and it classifies facts and manifestations demonstrated from spirit. Because of this advanced science and understanding, the universe is becoming smaller. What will science lead us to next?